You write in the book about how, in this solitary confinement, you had no one to talk to. So you began talking to a spider in your room. You named it Peter,
Yeah.
and you would sing to it the Spider-Man jingles or the tunes. And you know, you can
It's actually
smile.
a sign of madness.
I,
It's, you know,
I was going to say we can, you can smile and we can have a chuckle about it today. But imagine living that moment.
it was, and like I said, I've lived a very happy life. I had very wonderful, loving parents, a very involved father, a very involved mother. I have an amazing relationship with my brother and my sister. I have so many friends, and we have old relationships from school, and they mean a lot to me as a human being, as my makeup of who I am. And Peter was, he I just remember I was so alone and I was so scared. And I saw this spider. What would happen is every evening, these mosquitoes would come in swarms because there was a small hole in the ceiling. And in this helpless state that I was in, where I was being tortured, I was being abused, I was tied up, I had no access to anyone. And Peter was the only one protecting me, even if, out of 100 mosquitoes, he would eat one. He was the only form of protection from all the various forms that I required protection. He was the only one doing things for me. And, I'm a big comic book guy, and I just remember, and I can't remember, I just started singing, Spider Man, Spider Man. And I just started talking to him. And I would start telling him about my life. And one day, the guard saw, that he's communicating with someone. So he asked me, "What are you doing?" So I just, told him, "Oh, it's the spider." So he actually went to the roof with what a jhadu, which we sweep our floors with. He went up and he finished it. He finished Peter and his web just because the fact that I had someone to speak to bothered him so much. Sorry, I lost you, Barka.
I'm saying they killed even the
Ah.
spider that was of little
Yeah,
bit of solace to you.
anything. And there's a story in my book about the instant noodles that I was eating and why I was actually put on an animal fat diet. And again, it was I pleaded, to my kidnapper and tried to tell him that, you know, I have a history of diabetes in my family. So if you could just give me, something a little different, it would help. And I just remember the the coldness in his eyes when he looked at my guard and he said, "Give him animal fat, give him sheep fat. You'll kill him faster. You'll give him diabetes faster." Even the smallest acts of mercy. If I and I used to, because I was very scared in the beginning, I used to beg, but I would just be met with this, wall of zero remorse or feeling. As a matter of fact, almost barbaric. Not
Yeah.
almost barbaric.
How did you come to be buried alive?
So I still remember it was, what would happen is he would come into my room in the middle of the night and he would say, "Tomorrow we're going to make this video." And he would always say, he would say, "Ammi ke liye banayenge," as in, "We'll make it for your mother." Almost like he had a connection as well. It's so nonchalant that, we're going to make these videos. And he would always leave with saying, "Tayari karo," as in, "Get ready," and leave me through the night with myself. And I would always, every form of torture that he told me, but when he told me he would bury me up to my neck, I just looked at him and I said, "How?" And he said, "Don't worry, nothing will happen. Nobody's ever died being buried up to their neck." And they left me there for, I think, 6 hours the first time, 8 or 9 hours the second time, and 12 hours the third time. And it was over 3 days, and I had to dig my own grave. And then when they took me out, I had to also put all that, all the mud back. And they made my mother watch every second because there'd be a clue that they'd ask her. And if she missed it, they promised her they'd send her a more violent video. And for 6, 8, and 10 or 12 hours, up to my neck, and I just remember, I realized how thin this line between sanity, being sane, and being insane is, and how easy it is to push a human being over that line, and how close I actually came. And I can never weigh what was worse, because every time they would just brutalize me, whatever form it was, whether it was even carving my back. When they realize that, the back is strong, the skin is stronger and it kind of splits, and it doesn't cause that much pain unless you go very, very deep. And you could end up killing someone if you go very deep. And the point of torture is not to kill you, but to bring you to the brink of death. So they said, well, how do we make him experience this pain? So they started rubbing salt on all my cuts. They wouldn't stop. When they pulled my nails out, I had to bandage myself, and the guard would see me with my hand on the floor cleaning the wound, and he would come and smash it with his feet. So it wasn't just what you saw on video, but also the state that I was left in afterwards. And this was over a process of years. This was 2.5 years, till my kidnapper's mother-in-law saved my life, which is the strangest part of my story.
Yeah, and actually, I think somewhere you're right saying that it's not that the mother-in-law of your kidnapper was a soft-hearted woman. You felt that she was, she was the sort of person who would make a perfect suicide bomber, but somehow
She
she took
was.
pity.
Yeah, she actually was a registered suicide bomber. So she was Mohammed Tahir Farooq's wife, the man who founded the school. Like there's Osama bin Laden who founded Al Qaeda, and there's Mohammed Tahir Farooq who founded the IMU, which is also a very powerful organization in this part of the world. And she was his wife, and she believed him, and she believed his ideology, and she raised her children to be like him. So for her to pity me and save me is nothing short of a miracle.
And is Stockholm syndrome real? Was there any point where, because other than Peter the Spider, whom your kidnapper kills, the only conversation you're actually having with anybody is the guard and your kidnapper? Do you grow to, it's a very strange thing to say, but do you grow to say, okay, talking to them is better than talking to no one?
It's so strange, because when someone abuses you in the way that I was abused, brutalized, and in such a violent manner, it's very difficult to connect with them on any human level.
Of course.
Although I would have many conversations with them, whether
Yeah,
it was
at
my
some point
guard.
you're talking about he's being misogynistic and he wants you to talk about where the best women in the world are, and you say Brazil and he says bahut dur hai,
Too
and you
far.
finally too far, and you settle
We
in
focus.
on Italy, I think, right?
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
so you're having these conversations because if he wants to play, you've got to play, right?
yeah.
But
You
in
have to.
real terms, did you find yourself slipping into Stockholm syndrome?
No, I mean, with my kidnapper, I have to tell you, I could never connect with this man. And I, by the way, give a lot of that down to the way that I was raised and by the people who raised me. It's impossible for me to find any, level playing field with a murderer and someone who is so violent in his ideology. And in a similar manner, my guard, who I would listen to Man United games with on a radio. But when I was leaving prison, he said, we had a small conversation where I said goodbye to him. And he said, I was very good to you, but towards the end of this, you showed your true colors. And I said, you were never good to me. You listened to these games out of a necessity. You wanted to listen to the games. But when time came to pull my fingernails out, you never stopped my
But
kidnapper.
how did you reconcile hearing the Manu score with the guard who is stomping on you as you're sitting there in the blood of your own wounds? Like, how do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
reconcile?
This is something that there's no human explanation for. I think only football fans can connect, in this absolutely insane manner. But the truth is, I was so alone and I was so deprived of even the basic things that you need to function as a human being. When he suggested that, would you be interested in listening to these Man United games, because it's a sin amongst these people. So actually, he was breaking a law, and he knew the only person he could break this law with was the guy in jail. So we listened to these games in silence, and we knew what we were doing was wrong, and if we got caught, we'd both be severely punished, right? Severely punished.